The Resident by Octavius S. Manor. This is a thriller from Reedsy. Ike flew out of the back door as fast as he could. Would he come after me? What would he do when he caught me? Would he kill me? Ike thought as he desperately prayed to God. The man had a gun while Ike was defenseless. Ike reached his hiding spot, the one that kept him hidden for so many years. I could see a window from here. He didn't want to look inside, but he mustered up some courage and looked. Inside was the bodies of his parents. They were still hugging each other the way they were when they died. Tears found the way to his eyes, and before he knew it, Ike was full on weeping. Ike was suddenly looking around, trying to find something to impale himself on. He finally found something, and the world went blank. 356 years later. I hesitated, my fists an inch away from the door. Should I do it? Is the money worth it? The questions whizzed through my brain. I slowly lowered my fist, realizing I would just have to get someone else, but something inside me stopped me from turning away and retreating to my house. I'm not a 4-year-old. I won't be scared of some mysterious, weird neighbor, I muttered to myself. Slowly, my fists moved toward the door, doubts encircling my brain like vultures circling roadkill. I finally mustered all my courage and knocked. The door opened as soon as I knocked, revealing a strange man who was definitely not my neighbor. How? My voice trailed as he looked at me. What took you so long? He asked me. I was standing at the door for ages, waiting for you to knock. I was tempted to ask him how he knew that I was standing at the door. Instead, I asked him, Who are you? I expected him to say something like cousin or long-lost son, but he didn't answer. Instead, he chuckled and stated, Inquisitive one, isn't he? All your questions will be answered in due time. I looked at him weirdly, trying to figure out if there was a joke I had missed. Seeing the look on my face, he exclaimed, Oh, where are my manners? Come on in. Half an hour later, I was seated in my neighbor's armchair, sipping a hot coffee. Time after time, I had tried to question him about my neighbor, but he managed to evade my questions entirely. Now he was seated opposite me, and I finally had the chance to question him. Where's my neighbor? I practically hissed at him. He raised his eyebrows, surprised at my anger. Someone's feisty, eh? He laughed at me. Okay, fine. Your neighbor died 10 years ago when you were 9, he answered as soon as I glared at him. I was about to ask him how he knew my age when I realized that he said my neighbor had died 10 years ago. I'm sorry, I think I misheard you. Can you please say the part about my neighbor again? I politely asked him. He looked at me, his face impassible and serious. Your neighbor died 10 years ago, he repeated slowly and loudly like I couldn't understand English. I glared into his eyes, trying to find some evidence that he was joking. There was an extended silence in which I was expecting him to burst out laughing and say that he was out or something, but nothing happened. But I saw him yesterday gardening, I exclaimed. The stranger pulled a face. That was me. I hate gardening, however, John loved it. It was one of the many things we disagreed on. As he said it, he studied his hands as if the word gardening had suddenly changed him. I looked at him confused. But you don't look like him at all. I struggled to find words. He is old and you... I leaned forward and touched his hand, looking for something unnatural. I half expected him to shy away from my touch, but he watched me as I studied his hands. He finally sighed. I'll show you. As soon as he said that, he disappeared. Suddenly, he reappeared. However, this time he looked old and Johnny. I gasped in shock and stared at him. Laughter filled the room before I knew it. He appeared back in his chair. You're human, though. As soon as I said it, I felt stupid. He laughed at me again. I am not a human. However, I was 300 or so years ago, he told me. I shook my head, trying to put my thoughts back in order. I decided to ask him about John. You knew John? I questioned him. Before he died, yes. He replied with no emotion. You don't seem sad, I noted. I have lived here like this for 356 years, and no resident has been as bad as he has, he explained. I didn't know John that well, but he seemed nice when I spoke to him. I thought he was nice. I thought about John, how he helped me sell my artwork when I was 8 and how he would buy me gifts. Oh, he was nice. He just had bad taste, the thing exclaimed. Very, very bad taste. I decided to get straight to the point. Why have you showed me this? Your powers and your existence? It's not like I'm a resident or anything. I questioned him. A huge grin broke out of his face. I knew I said something stupid, but what is it? Why is he smiling then? He glanced at his watch. Any minute now, a lawyer is going to come and tell your family that John had died. That seemed normal. Then why did it seem as if he knew something I didn't? Then it hit me. Why a lawyer? Why not a family member or funeral director? I asked him, confusion seeping into my voice. Because, Mr. Parks, you are now officially the new resident of my house, he announced. A month later. We are now roomies, he exclaimed, excitedly slapping me on the back. Let me show you around the house. I allowed him to steer me towards the stairs. Tell me more about yourself, your name, your history. You get the idea, I said. My name, he choked as he said it. Well, they call me the Wanderer. Your name, I commanded. My name is Ike. This next story is called Mystery on Treetop Lane. It's by Beverly Hudson. It's a thriller from Reed. Penny and I love to take off shopping, especially during the holidays. The Halloween season was fast approaching and there was a lot of work out. Every year we host an old school Halloween event with all the traditional favorites. Apple bobbing, tasty apple cider, a Halloween costume contest, Mrs. Wittard's sugary cookies formed into ghosts and goblins, Mr. Grunley's pumpkin pie, and Halloween-themed games are all a part of the festivities. We went from one end of Blairsville to the other collecting items for the special evening. Not finding everything we needed, we had to drive to the neighboring town of Tyden. We chose the perfect decorative pieces for my backyard. Penny pulled in her driveway, and we were so tired that I understood why she didn't ask me to come inside. We said goodbye, and I walked across the street to my house. We had eaten while we were out, but I was hungry, so I ate my extra freed from Asian Moons. The food was delicious, but it made me even sleepier, so I took a nap. Waking up refreshed, I decided to look through our Halloween finds. Apples, check. Ingredients for apples, check. Decorative pieces, check. Oh no, I thought. We had no prizes for the costume contest. How could we forget that? Well, Penny and I would have to get it on our own, but before I volunteered to go myself, I wanted to ask Penny if she needed to go back into town. I walked across the street and knocked on Penny's door. After a bit, a strange man opened the door. He had the most evil look on his face, and his eyes seemed to stare straight into my soul. I was taken aback. When I gained my composure, I asked if Penny was home. The man looked at me like I was crazy, saying in a deep voice, "She lives here no more." I yelled, "Yes, she does. She's my best friend, and I was with her just today." He said again in his deep voice, "She has been dead 10 years, but come in, look around, see for yourself." I certainly will. I walked in slowly but deliberately, looking around at all the unfamiliar furniture, strange paintings, and decorative pieces. In the living room were children that I didn't recognize, watching TV and playing video games. A man and woman that I didn't know were in the kitchen loading the dishwasher. "What have you done with Penny?" I screamed. The woman in the kitchen came over to me and asked me to sit down on the unfamiliar couch. She held my hand and asked if she could help me. I didn't know what to say. I just sat there. She said, "Maybe we should take you to a hospital. You don't seem to know what's going on." I ran out of the house as quickly as possible. When I got back to my house, I called Penny's number on my phone, but instead of Penny's sweet voice, I received a disconnect notice. "This can't be true," I thought to myself, crying. I called my husband at work, and he tried to reassure me, but I don't think he believed me. Maybe it's time to call the police to report them, but for what? Being imposters? Killing Penny? For making me feel crazy? Well, I had no other choice. My hands were shaking as I dialed the number. "Blairsville Police Department, can I help you?" A lady with a pleasant voice answered. I didn't know what to say, but I sputtered out, "Please come to 214 Treetop Lane. People are at my friend's Penny's house. They're saying she's been dead for 10 years, but I was just with her today." "Calm down, ma'am. We will send a police officer right away." I was determined to talk with the police when they arrived, and I was in luck because the police car had just pulled up. I went over to the car and introduced myself. He introduced himself as Sergeant Bullard and advised me to go back to my house in case of immediate danger. So I waited at my house, being cautious, looking out the window and hoping this mystery gets solved. I could see him chatting and the man that answered the door, and then he walked inside. I'm guessing he was looking for any kind of evidence that would prove that Penny actually lived there. He came out of Penny's house and walked across the street to my house. After greeting him, he said, there was much to investigate and I should not engage in conversation with them. He said he was going to do a background check on all the people in the house and check with the bank to see the last time Penny had used her bank card. Thinking to myself, it's to see if she was still alive. It will take a little time, he said. Then he would get back to me. As I closed my door, I realized that I must have been in shock. This was all too much. I was not going to let this happen. I would begin my own investigation in the morning. I didn't get much sleep worrying about Penny. How was she? Was she safe? What about the people in the house? Who are they? What did they do with Penny? Why are they in her house? If there was one thing I knew, Penny wasn't dead, not now or 10 years ago. I began thinking about how I was going to investigate and whom I needed to speak with about Penny's disappearance. The next morning I got up determined to find the answer. I got my binoculars and set up in my bedroom so I could see Penny's house directly in front of me. I didn't care if they saw me or not. This is about Penny, not the strangers in her house. It had been 2 hours with no improvement of any kind until I saw the mail carrier coming down the street. I hurried to get outside fast enough to speak with him. I introduced myself. He said his name was Clint Petty, and he was replacing the regular mail carrier for the day. I explained the situation to him and asked him if he could tell me the name of the people that got their mail at 214 Treetop Lane. Of course, he said it was confidential. I asked him if he could tell me if there was anything he could do, almost begging. He said, "What can I do is tell you it's Penny's name at the address or not." I agreed. He looked in his mailbox and found the mail for the address. After looking at it for a while, he then told me, "Ma'am, this mail is not addressed to Penny Parsons." I said, "Let me see." "No, ma'am. You know I can't do that." "Let me guess. She's been deceased for 10 years, right?" "Great. Now she thinks I'm crazy too." "No, this whole town is crazy." I went back inside, fetched my keys and my purse, got in my car, and drove to Penny's job. She was a receptionist at Whole Life Insurance Company in downtown Blairsville. When I arrived, a young, slender woman with long hair and small features was sitting at the reception desk. I'd become used to this by now. In her sweet voice, she asked, "Can I help you?" Here I go again. "Where's Penny?" She gets a confused look on her face. "Penny?" she said. "I don't know what you mean." "Penny Parsons works here every day. Who are you and how long have you worked here?" "My name is Stephanie, and I have worked here for 5 years. Then I said, "And let me guess, she died 5 years before that, right?" By this time, she appeared to be fearful and shaken. I calmed down and asked to talk to the agent, Lindsay Turker. She replied in a still, quiet voice, "She's out today." And I said, "Of course she is." And I walked out angrily. I'm hoping this next stop will be different. Penny and I went to school with Susie, who owns Cutter Up Hair Salon. She's our stylist and also our friend. Maybe she can shed some light on the mystery. So when I got there, Susie said, "Hey, girl, how are you? When was the last time you cut Penny's hair?" An elderly woman in the corner who was shampooing somebody suddenly said, Penny, I remember her. She was a nice lady. But now I don't care." And I said, "Really?" I turned to Susie and said, "You of all people, Susie, I never thought you would do this to me." Susie seemed like she didn't know what to say. Then she said, "It was so sad when Susie died." I said excitedly, "Oh, really, Susie? Just how did she die?" When Penny died. She said, "It was never talked about. To this day, no one knows. I attended the funeral. It was so sad. Pastor Tom Brooks from First Church of Blairsville spoke. It was very touching. The choir sang Amazing Grace, and that nice lady that always sings in church sang, I Can Only Imagine." "Stop!" I screamed, and ran out in a frantic mess. I don't know how I got home. I must have driven like a mad, crazy person. Oh, I thought, I am a mad, crazy person. When I arrived home, Officer Bullard was in my driveway. I was in no mood to talk to anyone at this point. He got out of his car and started walking towards me. I stayed in my car. He approached my window and said, "I have run all the background checks and have found some interesting information about the strange man at Penny's house. I need you to walk with me across the street so you can identify him." Finally, we're getting somewhere, I thought. We walked across the street and knocked on Penny's door. The strange man with the deep voice answered the door. Sergeant Bullard asked me if this was the same man that I saw yesterday. I replied, "It is." Officer Bullard said he had some information that might be helpful. He pulled out a rolled yellow paper and slowly opened it up for me to view. He gave it to me and said, "I thought you would like to see this." The paper read, "Wanted. Strange man with a deep voice. For believing in, participating in, taking great pride in Halloween pranks. You have been pranked." With that, Penny and all the others came out from other rooms where they were hiding. I hugged Penny tightly, just knowing Penny was all right was enough. We spent the evening listening to how the prank came together. I was so glad it was over. That is, until next Halloween, when Penny gets her payback. The evil laugh is part of the story.